Hopefully we keep changing our minds, and hopefully we'll keep pushing the boundaries. And we might work for one institution and decide it sucks, and then we move on to another. I think the idea that somehow you wake up when you're 20, get into an organization that's perfect, and become perfect for the rest of your life, and don't change technologies is a dangerous one. So I hope that I keep changing. I hope that in 5 years' time I'm trying some other technology. Maybe the first time I use it, I'll mess up too, but I hope I do try it. Experimentation, movement is what it's all about. The second thing is, why did I work for these institutions? Firstly, I don't think it's black and white. I don't think that the World Bank is evil. I don't think the EBRD is evil. I think I was very proud, and still am, that I worked for the South African government. I'm even proud that I worked for the World Bank. These are institutions which internally have struggle in them, have all sorts of dynamics where they're wonderful people and they're really bad people. When someone came to become my boss at the World Bank, Paul Wolfowitz, that I, to this day, consider to be evil, the worst person I've ever worked for, I fought with him for 6 months, and when it became absolutely clear to me that there was no way I could have a positive impact in his space, and that he was going to actually bring me down as an individual in terms of my own morality, I resigned. Okay? That was a personal decision. I can say that if Paul hadn't come to the bank, and someone else had come that I felt comfortable with, I might still be there. That would have been bad, because I'm really loving my job and what I'm doing now. But these institutions are institutions worth fighting for externally, and I welcome all the criticism that comes to them and the need to keep pushing them, and internally. And if you don't have people fighting in the institutions, you'll really never win them. And these institutions are far too important and powerful for the world to just let go. They're not going to be changed by people just throwing things at them. They're going to have to be changed from within as well. So I feel it's a duel, and I feel, you know, I did what I did, and I actually have absolutely no regrets about the institutions I work for. I'm really glad I don't work at the World Bank anymore. And I'll say publicly as many times as I'm asked, I really think that Paul Wolfowitz was a disaster for the institution.
Hi Ian, again, just so this, I guess everyone can agree, thanks very much for taking the time out to come and speak to us here. It's not so much a question as a statement I have, and I'm sure someone in your position can take criticism, of course. I think you can fool a lot of people, but you don't fool many of us. To get to the Vice President of the World Bank, you have to really bow down to a lot of psychopathic and evil people. You mentioned how Islamic fundamentalism and jihadism is a force for evil, where we all know the American and the Israeli are the biggest terrorists in the world. Also, you mentioned that climate change, the skeptics should come to you. The massive science, all the scientists across the world are entirely divided. So I believe you're pushing a transhumanist, global government, one world government agenda, and you're here as nothing but a propaganda pusher. But hey, I guess everyone else is free to make up their own mind, but I'm sure we can have a beer afterwards and discuss it, but that's my criticism towards you. Thank you.
I've never had that variation on the criticism, but I recognize it. And why did I become Vice President of the World Bank? I think I became Vice President of the World Bank because I'd worked with Nelson Mandela before, that the South Africans felt it was important to have someone senior in the World Bank to try and change the institution, and then I was regarded as a credible person for that, both externally and internally. Whether that was because I was sycophantic towards Jim Wolfensohn, the president, or Nelson Mandela, or anyone else, yeah. That's a personal view. I think those institutions are institutions worth being with. They make a huge difference to the world, and I hope that when I was in them, I was able to do something good. But yeah, if you think that anyone that works there, or that anyone that's senior there, is necessarily evil, then I'm necessarily evil.
You just said that they weren't good.
It's just what your show shows. I mean, everything you're saying is get ready for the one world order. These organizations are so passé in last year. Get ready, everybody. There's going to be nanotechnology. Step up for your new iChip. You can get your first 1,000 downloads free in your ear. Oh, you want to perform better like this little mice? You can get your next little chip or something spliced in your genes. It's eugenics. It's the root of it. It is eugenics.
You can't stop that development.
You can assume that most of us are gullible and partiers are just going to line up to take it.
I hope my message was the opposite. I hope my message was the opposite. I hope if I sounded like an evangelist for this, I really screwed up in my talk. I hope my whole talk was these are some glimpses of some things that I think are happening. I don't think that they are good. I don't think that they are good. I think, and I hope the message of my talk was, worry about this, become active about it, become engaged with this, because this is stuff that's happening. That's all my talk was about. It wasn't that somehow, I don't think that genetic mutilation between advancement is good. I certainly don't believe in advancement. I believe it's going to increase inequality in the world, which I'm really fiercely against. But I think it's happening. I worry about it.
To emphasize that point, because you're showing like the different things that are happening.
No, you said the global governance is necessary. You're talking about global dictatorship. There is no such thing as global governance. Because you can't have
globalization has made everything better.
You can't have a global democracy.
That's a huge.
There's no such thing. 20 people controlling the world is not a democracy. That's not.
And we've got a question from over here.
No, I agree with you. That's why it has.
We're on to you. Just let your people know that
You don't agree with me.
This is not about global governance, it's about a new paradigm of being, of understanding globalisation in a much more integrated world.
You're recounting Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Okay, we've got a question from over here.
Global governance, dictatorship.
Ian, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and speaking. I just wanted to make a short comment, okay? I graduated with a Masters in Conflict Resolution in 2008. I wasn't able to get any work because we were in the middle of a credit crunch, so I started driving a taxi. After that, my friend gave me a job. I'm building gun sites at the moment to help kill people more efficiently. Right? That's what I'm doing at the moment. But coming here today and listening to you speak the way that you did makes me a little bit more positive about the fact that people can do good things. You can change the way that you perceive things, and you can try to do a little bit better. Obviously, this gentleman's worked in the field that he has for many years. He's changed his view about things, but it's about being inspired by people. And for me, you've done that in the short space of time that you're speaking today. So thank you.
Okay, another question from the front.
Hi, I'm also extremely grateful for your talk. I've done a little bit of future studies myself, and partly because I was so depressed by all the apocalypse now and crisis narratives which drive everything. So I was also grateful for your optimism. And I think it's actually a false fight here, because as far as I could see it, your final message was a call to participative citizenship, which is definitely lacking generally. And these people...
That's what I thought I'd say.
These people are fiercely participative and politically active, and I just think that there's a misunderstanding somewhere. But I was hoping... Well, my question to you was... You talked about future studies and you talked about the failure of global governance. So... in your view, what will the future of global governance look like? Will there be a UN in 2020? And what will multilateralism look like in 2050?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, and certainly I think everyone that argued with me has now left the room, so I can't argue back. But well, not everyone, at least the two. Okay, good. No, that's good. So I mean, my nightmare scenario would be some global, Politburo running the world. I mean, that would be a nightmare. On the other hand, on climate change, I really hope that 20 leaders can come together and do something in terms of cutting carbon emissions. Otherwise, Bangladesh is going to be washed away. Well, at least 30 million people in it are going to be. Certainly the Maldives will be. So I think if you read the UN Charter, it must be the most beautiful document in the world. We the people, it begins with, and it goes on. And it's very difficult when you look at the UN documentation to argue with it. And it has a huge advantage of legitimacy. It's owned by 206 countries. So the UN is the legitimate organization that does really, more than any other, reflect a global community at the political level. The problem is that in many areas, it's not effective in managing these challenges. It doesn't have the resources, it's starved of them to do things more effectively. Partly because the smaller group of countries, like the G8, create other organizations, and including the World Bank, dominate other organizations that they can use more effectively to achieve their ends. So there's a deliberate starving of the UN system. Is the UN an organization that in 2020 will exist? I think so. One of the amazing things about the post-war period is that it's very difficult to think of any institution that's ever been closed down at the global level. I think there are two, like tiny little things. but no global institutions really been closed down. So they hobble on, but that's not what you want. You want leadership. So I think, actually, and I hope that's what my message was, although clearly I didn't articulate it clearly enough, was that it's going to have to be us. It's going to have to be citizens' action, as you said. I think there's going to, how does that work? There's some interesting books on how network-led activity or citizenship-led activity, and how do you actually make decision-making through them. But it's going to have to be some morph of what we know now. Because I think what has happened is that we're in some sort of stalemate, and a very dangerous stalemate period. With existing institutions don't work, citizens don't have real power, and so nothing really happens in terms of global decision making. And that's a dangerous process, especially for climate change and things that really have to have quick solutions.
Sorry to ask a second question. I don't have a mic, but I was just, you were talking about, you know, obviously global bodies like the UN. These institutions such as the World Bank and IMF, UN, seems to be, from the outside, from us here, seem to be controlled by, you know, United States, UK, Israel, you know, large, very powerful economic nations. How do we change that so that, you know, the people, the places with the largest amount of people, you know, say you see Bangladesh with 30 million people, obviously they don't have that much of a voice in the UN, but there's 30 million people under threat from climate change, or, I mean, it's not really, my question is really specific to climate change, but, or conflict or anything. How do we kind of shift the power from these traditional states such as like Western Europe, China, US, to other nations where, you know, there are huge millions, tens of millions of people who need a voice?
Yeah, so that's absolutely key. I mean, the one of the silver linings in the global financial crisis has been this morphing of the G8 into the G20, which includes, so it's not 8 people anymore, it's 20, and actually it's more like 24 or 25, because countries like Spain and Portugal, which weren't in the G8 or in the G20. That's progress, I suppose. I mean, my concern is that actually it's more like a talk shop. They don't have real power. But, you know, countries like China, you're talking about Bangladesh, that's a lot of people, but China's 1.3 billion, India's 1.3 billion people, they're not part of the G8. It's just extraordinary that these organizations are so dominated by the old powers of really yesterday. So there has to be that. I think it's going to happen. I think people recognize that if you want to do something, you have to include everyone. And the amazing thing about the new challenges, if you look at climate change, if you look at pandemics, if you look at any of these big challenges facing the world, it doesn't matter what you do in the US or in the UK. You're actually not going to solve the problem unless you get global participation of most people. And that's why I think the problems or the solutions will drive themselves to